Hey everyone, happy Sunday to you. I hope all is well. We're already in week 11 now, and as we wrap up this week's chapter 32 quiz 3 on chapter 32, the process of treatment, I'll talk a little bit about the real world process of treatment. And then this week, in week 11, you have a DB on counseling in a treatment setting. It's kind of all led up to what's going on, and many of us will work as LCDCs in a treatment setting. And whether you do or don't, you should be familiar with the treatment setting, because if you choose to work with this population, you're going to need to know about treatment, because you're going to come across that more than you might think. That said, is this week in chapter 34 is on relapse and other problems encountered in a treatment setting. And trust me, there's no shortage of problems in that setting. Now, I've talked about language many times throughout this semester, and I think you all know my philosophy on it. I think it's the language we use in this industry is antiquated, and relapse is another one I don't care for. Even our professionals use it, so if you use it, I'm not saying don't. I'm just saying consider. Return to use is more appropriate, I think, today than relapse. Relapse just has this negative connotation to it. So that said, consider that, right? So you'll have your DB on that. So let's talk a little bit about treatment settings. Ideally, if a person needs treatment, and this is again is where let me back up. We'll individualize. You have to individualize every person's needs. Not everybody's going to fit the ideal mold, right? And so ideally it's set up like this. There's a there's a detox, a residential, a PHP, an IOP. Sometimes there's an SOP, and then there's aftercare, right? That's a lot of stages, right? Not everybody does all those stages. Not everywhere offers all those stages. So ideally a detox is a medically supervised stay, right? You're there, they're usually 5 to 7 days. There are some what I call standalone detox facilities, meaning that's all they do. I'm not a huge fan of those. I think they're okay, but I think if a person needs detox, I would rather send them to some place that offers a residential program, so that if they do decide to stay, they're there. But my theory is if a person needs a detox, let's put that into perspective. It's not like they tied one on or they did a little too much dope or whatever. There's a problem, right? That their body needs to be medically detoxed from a substance. So I think a residential stays in order. And again, I don't have that say. I don't get to say that what people do. I'm just saying my theory there. So the detox unit. Then there's a residential program, and many of them are one and the same, meaning same location, same maybe different section, different unit or whatever. But the residential units, where they're there, they live there, right? And they could be there from 30, 60, 90 days, 2 weeks. I mean, everywhere is very different. 30 days comes from insurance, just so you're clear on that. Most programs are set up as a 30-day program. Because of that, that's what insurance will cover. There are programs that are 90 and 60 days, and again, that's a hard sell for people, right? So some people it's helpful for, some people it's not, right? And so then you have PHP, which is partial hospitalization program, and that is a day program, and it's usually, after residential, it's usually 2 weeks, and it's like 8 to 5, 8 to 4. And then you have all the same programming and whatnot. And then you have IOP, intensive outpatient, which, depending on the spots, usually a couple hours a day, 2 to 3 hours a day, 3 or 4 days a week. Then you have SOP at some places. And IOP can be anywhere from 5 to 12 weeks, depending on the place, right? And then you have SOP, which is supportive outpatient. I think I give that as a bonus somewhere. I think I already did. I know I did. And in one of these two classes, and most people put standard operating procedure, which is awesome, because it stands for that too, I guess. But in this realm, it's supportive outpatient, which is usually 1, maybe 2 days a week. I know a place I really like customizes that, and they'll do a phone call twice a week. They'll do it in 2 groups, 1 Zoom, 1 in person. So everywhere is different. Not everywhere offers that either. And here's the thing too: a lot of people, if they go the route of detox, residential, PHP, they're ready to be done by that stage. You've been in treatment a long time. What research shows us, and mounds of research, I'm not going to quote any specific research, but there's a lot of research that supports that the longer people stay engaged, the higher the success rate. I mean, that's not rocket science. Do we really need research to show that? That's pretty, I mean, it seems pretty standard, right? That would be the case. But again, you got to understand there's all kinds of ways this looks, meaning some people just do detox and go to IOP. Some people just do detox and don't do anything else. Some people do PHP and IOP and nothing else. Some people do just residential. There's so many ways that can look, and you have to be able to identify and your client's needs, right, and work with them together. And this is why I say trust your instincts, one, but trust your BD people. Get to know them, tour the centers, know their philosophies. There's a place in Austin that I love greatly called the Arbor that they will tell you, if I have a professional that needs to use a computer, they'll be like, it's not for us then. And they will say, or if I'm looking for somebody who AA 12-step model's not really their jam, they'll be like, they're not going to try to fit them in there and make it work. They're going to tell you, it's not for us. So know their philosophies, know their people, know their ideals. It's going to make you a better clinician. And again, we're as good as our resources, right? So this week, as we talk about relapse and other problems encountered in a treatment setting. Now, it's been a minute since I've read the textbook. I've been teaching this class a long time. So I'm just going to share some real world experience. I worked at a treatment center for about 9 years of my career, just under. So for 6, I was a clinician, and for 2, I was a BD rep, a business development rep, so a marketer, right, which was a phenomenal role. It really was a springboard for my private practice. So never, on the side note, never discount where your career might take you or what job opportunity may come your way in the field. So that said, there's a number of problems. Treatment centers look a lot of different ways. Some are owned by big corporations like, Summit, for example, owns treatment centers all over the country. There's several that own multiple centers. Then you have what I would say your little mom and pop places, right, that are family owned. Some are in a house setting. Some are in Luna Recovery is in a beautiful home in the Heights. And they're a wonderful treatment center, super expensive, but very, very good at what they do. And that setting is right for some people, where others, you have a place like the Park where it's more of a hospital setting. You have, everywhere in between. And there's advantages and disadvantages to all those and problems that come with all those, but very different problems. When I worked at the Park for many years when it was Memorial Hermann. And Memorial Hermann Hospital System, most of you are probably familiar here in Houston, that comes with its own set of rules. There's a team of lawyers that wouldn't fit into this office that make these rules, right, and guidelines and things. So there's that piece. And you have a business office. You have an admissions team. You have the counselors, the doctors, the nursing staff, the discharge planners, I think I said the business office. You have all of these things, these moving parts trying to work together, right? You have management, upper directors, executive directors, clinical directors. You have your techs. Like, there's so many things. You have a tech saying something to one person. I know a lot of places are using peer support specialists, and I know several of you are those. Wonderful, right? I think every person that's in the industry should at least have that training and be able to talk to people. But sometimes people do what people do, and they say things they shouldn't, right? And then the clinicians, you can see where it creates problems sometimes when everybody's not on the same page. And then sometimes you have rogue clinicians. They just do whatever they want to do, right? Say whatever, and it's not okay. So you have that too. And then you have clinicians and doctors butting heads sometimes. Then you have management butting heads. You have policies. You can see clearly how it can be some issue, right? At Memorial Hermann, they would always get on to us about all the days we were leaving on the table. and they were certed this many days for IOP. Well, if they have to go back to work 3 days early, I've always been of the opinion, okay, what's best for this client? From a business perspective, we are leaving those days on the table, but I'm like, is 3 days making or breaking them? They've been here 65 days. You know what I mean? So you have to, there's all those things that can happen. Now, obviously this talks about relapse as well. Again, I don't care for that language, but since that's what it's called here, I'll use it. People return to use all the time. I had a dear colleague, leave the industry because of what she called the revolving door, right? And that's something you have to be aware of. It can be discouraging when you're doing all this great work with people and they just keep returning, right? They go out. I don't want to say it's easy, but it's easier for people to be a rock star, so to speak, no pun intended there, in treatment than it is to get out in the real world. And here's what happens often is people will do great work in treatment while they're bubbled up. That's the idea of the layout. It's called a step down process. You're bubbled up in residential, you're medically supervised in detox, you're bubbled up in residential, you're here all day during PHP, so you still get to go home and come back and process that. Then you step down to lesser level of care with IOP. That's the idea, right? But people start feeling good, and they things aren't as important. AA calls it the gift of desperation, and it is a gift because when our back's against the wall, we're willing to do just about anything to make a change, right? But once things start getting back to normal, it's a little more challenging. And it's really easy for us to focus on, okay, if this happens, if you start feeling this way, do this. But what happens when I start feeling good? Equally as important of a conversation to have, right? And this is why we support, and I say we, most of the professionals in this industry support longer term care. Not necessarily treatment, but longer term care, 1 to 2 years in recovery groups, therapy, psychiatry, whatever is needed for your client there, because it takes that long to rewire our brains, to create new neural pathways to change our thinking. That's the value of the longer term. So one thing I can tell you as a clinician for so many years at a treatment center is everyone that I saw come back, I would always greet them. Hey, we're glad you made it back. Let's get back to work. But one thing they always said, no matter what the story was of why they came back or why they went back out or whatever happened, started using again or drinking again, was they said the same thing almost to a person, and that was, I stopped doing what was working for me. Right? You see this a lot with mental health and medications. I stopped taking this antidepressant because it's not really doing anything for me, and I don't want to take this anymore, and I feel good. Well, that's probably because the medicine's doing exactly what it's supposed to do, right? So maybe, I'm not a doctor, and I don't want to go down that road, but I am saying you see that a lot. And then they stop taking it, and it doesn't go well, and on and on and on, right? And the first thing we typically do is self-medicate. Anyways, you get the idea. So, lots of problems in treatment, but lots of good comes from treatment. I am very pro-treatment, as you know. I think the good far outweighs the bad. And so once this week is done, you have the following week, in week 12, you have your last meeting to attend, either refuge or recovery or recovery dharma, which are basically the same. They are about Buddhist principles. Then you have Celebrate Recovery. You have a choice of those three. Celebrate Recovery is a Christian-based 12-step program. All are phenomenal. Again, every one of these groups are great. They're just not always great for your client, right? So it's about getting educated on them. So whichever one you choose, my hope for you, as has always been, as I've stated throughout the semester, is that you will go to the other one, not for an assignment, just to learn. Experience it. At least go once, twice, whatever. I know we're busy, but look, we owe this to our clients. It helps us help them. And we're honored to do this work, right? So keep that in mind. It's very important. Then you have an Easter break for a couple of days. Then we're on to the last 4 weeks. Quiz. We're on to DB, quiz. Really, this last 4 weeks, You have your paper, then you have your DB, which summarizes your paper. You have Easter break, so then you have a quiz, then you have a personal reflection assignment. That's it. So we're winding up quick, guys. So this week, think about how that looks in treatment and what problems maybe some of you have experienced in a treatment type setting, whether outpatient, inpatient. I'll put a bonus up at some point this week to follow the quiz. As always, guys, if I can be of any assistance, please don't hesitate to reach out, and have a great week.